I will stay closely aligned with the current rhythm of Beyond the Gates. Lynette has just made a new blackmail demand of Hayley in the storyline for the week of April 8th to 10th, 2026. While Randy is also being pushed into an interrogation. So the most logical direction for this story is that the game is no longer just about money. It is turning into a battle for control, where the one holding the secret is not necessarily the strongest person in the room, but may instead be the first to die once greed pushes past every limit. But does Lynette realize she is playing a far more dangerous game than she thinks? Will Hayley keep enduring it in silence, or will she finally be forced to turn to Randy for help? And when Lynette's greed crosses beyond what Hayley can tolerate, who will be destroyed first? At Fairmont Crest, the most dangerous collapses rarely begin with shouting. They usually open with a frown held a second too long at a hotel bar, with a bill no one dares explain, with a ring left on the hand of someone who has no right to keep it. And with the moment a secret stops being something to hide and becomes something to bargain with. That is exactly the shape of the disaster unfolding now between Hayley, Lynette, and Randy. On the surface, this is merely a blackmail scheme between people who once shared the same mud. But looked at more closely, it is a rebellion of greed, a chain reaction set off when a woman who believed she could buy silence discovers the most terrifying truth inside any conspiracy. Money can hire accomplices, but it cannot teach accomplices where to stop. At first, Lynette was only a shadow from the past, an inconvenient witness Hayley was forced to keep fed in order to stop her marriage from exploding. She came into Hayley's life with a secret, like someone who understood the price of information, but very quickly she began behaving like someone with the right to decide other people's fates. What makes Lynette frightening is not simply that she is greedy. Fairmont Crest has never lacked greedy people. What makes her a genuine threat is that she understands one very simple principle. A frightened person is always easier to control than a person in debt. Hayley may still have money, status, and the polished outer shell that lets her cross luxurious hallways with her chin held high. But Lynette knows that beneath that calm surface is a mind already trembling. And once fear has been seen clearly, every negotiation stops being equal. That is why Lynette no longer stops at living lavishly on Hayley's money. She stays in the hotel as though it were her own territory, excuses her behavior as though she deserves every privilege, and swipes Hayley's black card with the shamelessness of someone who believes she is collecting an insurance fee rather than leeching off another woman. Every item she buys is not just spending. It is a reminder wrapped in velvet that Hayley has lost control over the consequences of her own actions. And the engagement ring that Lynette stubbornly refuses to return carries an even deeper meaning. If this were only about money, she could have chosen things easier to convert into cash. But a ring is a symbol. It is proof of position, of social victory, of a ticket into a life Lynette has always stood outside of, staring in with eyes full of both hunger and bitterness. Keeping the ring is no longer an act of material theft. It is a way of testing the throne Hayley climbed onto 30 seat, as if Lynette wants to ask herself whether, if she can one day push Hayley down, she might be able to sit in that very place. This is the point where Lynette's greed begins to reveal a nature more dangerous than money. She is no longer asking for a share. She is testing whether she can seize power. Every new demand she makes is not only meant to squeeze out more benefit, but to break Hayley's will piece by piece. When someone keeps forcing, threatening, setting conditions, and deliberately holding onto a humiliating symbol like the ring, it means the goal is no longer profit, but the restructuring of power. Lynette wants Hayley to grow used to asking permission. She wants Hayley to understand that from now on, every safe breath she takes must be bought back. That is the cruelest form of psychological control, because it makes the victim not only fear exposure, but begin to doubt her own ability to save herself. Hayley, of course, is not foolish enough to miss the fact that she has fed a starving beast with her own hands. The problem is that she realized it too late. When the secret was still small, Hayley believed that a few payments, a few favors, a few moments of patience would be enough to shut Lynette up. That is the mistake manipulators often make. They think everyone can be managed like a situation, but people are not situations. And greed, once fed, never returns to its original size. It only grows. What Hayley is now beginning to realize in panic is not simply that Lynette will never stop, but that she herself helped teach Lynette exactly how never to stop. Every time Hayley paid, softened, or gave in, she did not buy more time. She was only training the other woman to believe she could be pushed further. Trapped in that position, the largest question is not whether Hayley will strike back, but whether she is still calm enough to strike back intelligently. A person who has been blackmailed for too long usually falls into one of two extremes. Either she keeps hoping that one more concession will finally be the last, or she suddenly turns reckless and flips the board in a moment of panic. Hayley is standing between those two cliffs. She is alert enough to understand that Lynette is becoming a mortal threat to the entire lie she has built, yet frightened enough to hesitate before cutting out the rod. That hesitation is exactly what makes Lynette bolder, because the one who is winning always smells indecision faster than words. And then Randy emerges as a variable both necessary and dangerous. If Hayley turns to Randy, it could be the final cry for help from a woman standing at the edge. But it could also be the moment she is forced to admit just how severe the disaster she has hidden for so long truly is. Randy is the kind of man who understands the value of loyalty, but only within the limits of whatever still serves his own survival. In a scheme built on lies, loyalty was never a matter of morality. It was only a temporary agreement between people trapped together. If Hayley is forced to tell Randy everything, he will not simply hear about Lynette spending money, keeping the ring, and making new demands. He will hear an alarm bell ringing for himself. Because once Lynette has become greedy enough to pressure Hayley, there is no reason to believe she has not prepared something powerful enough to crush Randy too, if necessary. That is why Lynette cannot be viewed as someone who entered this game empty-handed. A woman who lives by blackmail and keeps no evidence is no different from someone removing her armor in the middle of a battlefield. The strongest possibility is that Lynette is not holding these secrets in memory alone. She may also be keeping receipts, saving text messages, recording careless moments from Hayley. Perhaps even hiding one final card to protect herself if her former allies suddenly decide to eliminate the weakest link. And it is here that Lynette's greatest illusion begins to show itself. She believes she is strong because she holds the secret. But in games like this, the person holding the secret to openly is usually not the strongest player at all. She is only the earliest marked target. The more recklessly she spends, the more excessive her demands become. The more openly she acts as though she can command Hayley, the more Lynette turns herself into the thorn that must be removed. Her first real mistake may not lie in any single act, but in the accumulation of arrogance. She has mistaken temporary power for durable power. Someone can make others fear her for days, weeks, even months, simply by holding a secret. But without protection, without stable social standing, without real allies, that power is only fire bursting from dry straw. It burns fiercely, but it dies fast. Lynette may be standing in a luxurious hotel room, wearing a ring that is not hers, holding a card tied to money she did not earn, and imagining that this is victory. In truth, it may also be the perfect picture of the day she is pushed forward as the sacrifice. Hayley will have to choose. Either she continues allowing fear to control her, turning herself into a bottomless wallet and a trembling shadow before a woman who was once merely an inconvenient witness, or she accepts a brutal truth. If she wants to save the lie, she may have to become dirtier one more time. If she turns to Randy, their alliance could become a calculated firebreak plan, cut off the money, set a trap, force Lynette to expose a weakness, or worse, shift all blame onto her in order to save themselves. And Randy, caught between protecting Hayley, protecting the plan, or protecting himself, will most likely choose the path that keeps him alive the longest. That is not necessarily betrayal. It is simply the cold logic of people used to walking on cracked ground. So the final question is not whether Lynette can defeat Hayley. The real question is whether Lynette understands that she has already gone too far to retreat. In a game built from a false marriage, dirty money, purchased silence, and allies loyal only to their own fear, the most dangerous person is not always the one shouting the loudest. Sometimes it is the one who stays silent the longest, watches the closest, and waits for the right moment. Lynette believes she is the knife at Hayley's throat. But very possibly, in the eyes of Hayley and Randy, she has already become the bloodstain that must be wiped away before the whole room is exposed. And when Lynette's greed passes beyond all limits of tolerance, the first counterstrike may not come in the form of loud rage, but as a very cold, very clean, very Fairmont crust decision: cut ties. Shift the blame. Eliminate the problem. At that point, what Lynette will pay may not be money or reputation alone. It may be the entire illusion she clings to in order to believe she controls the game, one from beginning to end. She has only ever been a chess piece imagining herself the hand moving the board. Lynette's greed truly seems to have no stopping point. From a woman who simply knew the secret, she is now acting like the person in control of the entire game. Living lavishly on Hayley's money, refusing to return the engagement ring, and continuing to make new demands, Lynette is no longer merely a nuisance. She has become a genuine threat. Because in a scheme built on deception, the greediest person is rarely the one who wins. More often, that is the person who is offered up first. All the content I create is purely speculative and based on personal opinions. If you find the video interesting and helpful, please support me with a like and a comment. If you have better ideas or more interesting speculations, please share them in the comments so everyone can discuss them. I appreciate all your contributions and support. Thank you very much. If you haven't followed us yet, please scroll down and subscribe. Thank you. See you in the next videos.